Hello, wine drinking people. We're back. It's Wednesday, April 7th. And after a shutout in the store on Monday, we had a pretty good day yesterday in the store with three suppliers. We started the day out with Erica Wolf. She's representing the Gems portfolio from Southern Wine and Spirits, and this is one of the portfolios we'll always have room for wines from Gems in the store. The late Jimmy Mansbach started this portfolio. He was a good friend and one of the most knowledgeable people about small producers in California in the wine business in South Florida. So we started out with a great producer from Spring Mountain, Schweiger, their Sauvignon Blanc, which this wine actually comes from a vineyard, the Uboldini Vineyard, which is in Sonoma. This is kind of a cross between New Zealand-style Pinot Sauvignon Blanc and a Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc. Had a lot of nice citrus fruit and some of that melon in there too. It wasn't too sweet like the New Zealand's can be. And then had a nice, bright, zesty finish. Very nice Sauvignon Blanc. A little bit of that stone-like minerality that you get from Sauvignon Blanc also. Very nice, and just a hint of fresh-cut grass. Next up, we had the AP Vin Pinot Noir from Canceller Vineyard. AP Vin is a winery that features tiny production Pinot Noirs from specific sites throughout Northern California, and some really good stuff. This Canceller Vineyard, even though it was very big, 15+% alcohol, which I usually don't like Pinots that are this alcoholic, this wine still had balance, a lot of sweet, ripe, juicy fruit. Definitely no mistaking this wine for a California Pinot Noir, but very nice. A little expensive, $50. But with Pinot, we're willing to pay a little more to get good Pinot. David Noyes, another really small producer. We had David in at the Tower Club at our February tasting. His wines were very good. We had his Russian River Pinot yesterday. And then to finish off, we had the Schweiger Cabernet Sauvignon. This is definitely a mountain-style Cabernet. Very big, very juicy, and had a little bit of that cigar box spice to it. Really nice, really well-built from the 2004 vintage, a very good vintage in Napa Valley. Unfortunately, it was followed by 2005, which is better for most people, but still an excellent wine at around $50. Next up, we had old friend Bob Daniel. And I don't mean that, Bob, that you're old or anything, but we've known Bob for a long time here. He brought by Kimberly Kesslin from the Henriot Group. This group now owns the Bouchard Perifils, and these were the wines that they were showcasing yesterday. And Kimberly stopped by with a lot of wines from the 2008 vintage, which this is a vintage we'll probably be shying away from the pre-sales, as 2007 got much better press, and then 2009 looks to be an outstanding vintage in Burgundy. So we're getting already some requests for the 2009 vintage wines of Burgundy and Bordeaux. We're pretty familiar with the wines of Bouchard, as we've had Luc Bouchard at the Great Wine Seminar 2 times. He was here last year, and he was here several years ago, and he brought the 1949 Baby Jesus wine, the infant baby Jesus, the Beaune Premier Cru that this winery is so well known for. This wine, one of the oldest Burgundies I've ever had, and still drinking fabulous. This wine has got great structure. And we tried the 2006 vintage of this wine, which is a pretty good value, even though it's $100 for, a great Premier Cru. Some Premier Crus, like the wine I had last night, the Santenay from Burno Colin, which we'll be talking about in the heading of this email, is not equal with the Premier Cru from Beaune, like the Baby Jesus, with a lot of people think is Grand Cru in terms of its quality. So the first wine that we had was a Beaune Clos de la Mousse. Bouchard is probably most famous, Bouchard Perifils, because there are 2 producers with the name Bouchard. Bouchard Anne, which the family kind of gets confusing with Burgundy. There's a lot of intermarriages here, and because of the Napoleonic Code, when a property is passed on to the next generation, it's split equally among the heirs. So we'll talk about that a little later with our feature on the email today. But this Beaune Clos de Mousse was very nice, and the 08's a good vintage, but again, like I said, it's nothing we're going to invest in until after they arrived, and we've seen the price reduced like we have with 2006. 2006, kind of a very good vintage also, but again, following 2005, a great vintage, one of the greatest vintages in the last 20 years in Burgundy. So, I don't know if we're going to talk about too many of these Bouchard wines in particular. You can read the notes if you want to see them, but some very good stuff in there, and stuff you should look for, like I said, at a reduced price. So that's just what I drank in the store. And last night, I didn't make the mistake that I did a few weeks ago. If you're watching the show, I forgot to call Tony to see what she was making. Last night, I did call her, and she's making some Asian dishes. So for me, Asian, and spice means I want something, an aromatic white. I want something cold. Some people will try to drink red wine with spicy food, and you can if it's not too spicy, but for me, real spice, you need something cold. Beer works good, something with effervescence also. Champagne is great with spicy food. But last night, Tony made this peanut chicken dish with a little hoisin and lettuce wrap. With 3 different spicy sauces, and the Piri Estelle was perfect with this dish. This wine is a blend of Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and Pinot Gris. The Riesling, you had a little bit of that petrol, a little bit of that telltale slaty minerality to it. The Gewürztraminer brought in that lovely perfume and spice. Gewürztraminer literally means spicy grape, and the Pinot Blanc brought in the structure of this wine and the juicy fruit. And this wine really helped to level off the heat after you took a bite. And the lettuce cup also, I love the lettuce cup idea when you have that also helps to lower the heat in your mouth in a spicy dish. So that was perfect. And then we moved on to the little green pork Penang curry dish, which had some green beans in it and some bamboo shoots, and we had our Bruno Colin 2005 Santenay Premier Cru La Gravières with this, which would have been better slightly chilled, but still very nice. Santenay has got some tannin to it, so it stood up to the spice, and then the acidity also helped to clear off the palate, and this lovely strawberry raspberry fruit that was just really exotic with the curry. Very nice choice. And hey, we're not done yet. I had a couple friends over. That's just 2 bottles. There was 4 of us. So next up, thank you, David Miller, for bringing over the Roberto Vuerzio Barolo Cerrecchio. This is a wine that we actually bought together. We were in Italy several years ago, and a very tough wine to get in the States, a very expensive wine. The 1998 vintage we had last night was drinking beautiful. I don't know if you want to keep this wine for that much longer. It had this kind of dried, raisiny, almost fruit character to it, which would lead me to believe the fruit's drying out a little bit in this wine. This can happen in some of these new wave Barolos, and Cerrecchio, or Roberto Vuerzio, definitely one of the new wave producers. New wave meaning less maceration time, new oak treatment, and this wine had some lovely perfume and spice to it, dried floral notes, which is Barolo is so well known for. We waited till after we had dinner for this one. This would have absolutely been a train wreck with the food, but it was fantastic by itself. We sucked that down, and we weren't finished yet. Like I said, there was 4 of us, so a bottle per person is kind of a minimum in my house, and the best way to end an evening was with champagne. And we had a little Drapier Rosé, which my wife actually started the evening with, which champagne is also one of the best ways to begin an evening, which we finished off. And this wine had lovely raspberry and strawberry Jolly Rancher candy to it, a little bit of ginger spice, very nice end to an evening, and that effervescence kind of refreshes your palate and makes me ready for nighty-night. So that's what I drank last night. What am I trying to sell you today? Well, today we just have a screaming deal on 2007 vintage white burgundies. Yes, I said 2007 vintage white burgundies. As I mentioned before, 2006, good vintage. 2008, good vintage. 2007, a great vintage for white wines. I cannot believe the price we have on these Premier Cru Chassagne Montrachets from Bruno Colin. As I mentioned before, the ownership passes through to the next heirs, and you may not be familiar with Bruno Colin if you haven't been following Burgundy for a little while. This wine is Michel Colin Delager's 2 sons. Bruno Colin is one of them, Philip is the other, so there is no more Michel Colin Delager label. There is now Bruno, and there is Philippe Colin Delager. So Bruno is making some fantastic wines. We've got incredible prices. Check it out on today's email. I'm your host, Andrew Lamposoni, for the Wine Watch, signing off. And remember, always drink the good stuff first.